Hi, boys and girls. So I'm going to talk about soil and soil formation. I have soil augers that I've had for quite a long time because I love to look at soil. And here is a sample of soil that I got out of my backyard. So the soil auger has teeth at the bottom, and you stick it in the soil and you twist and push and twist and push. So look at this sample. You can see that there's some pine needles and bits of leaves at the top of it, the fluffy stuff. And then you can see gray materials. I can see a lot of sand because we have sandy soil on Cape Cod. And then I have this sample at the bottom. It gets really lighter as you go through. So let's talk about what soil is made out of and the importance of soil. What would our planet be like without soil? There wouldn't be much, would there? It would be like the middle of the Sahara Desert. It would just be earth materials, but there wouldn't be any organic part. There wouldn't be anything that used to be alive, and you wouldn't have any plants, right? They need that as well because that organic can hold on to water, and plants need that, right? So let's look at a recipe for soil. So this is a recipe for soil. And soil is almost half, about 45% of mix of minerals. And the mix of minerals differs from place to place. On Cape Cod, we have glacial deposits. So our mix of minerals is different than the mix of minerals where I grew up in Kentucky. Our soil was a reddish color and really, really rich, but it looks very different. And even the soils in Rhode Island, where my brother lives and where I lived for a few years growing up, that soil was black. So it's very different. Regional soils differ depending on the mix of minerals. So it's like the flavorings of the soil. And then the part that used to be alive is just a smidge. So if you just do a recipe and it says a smidge of salt or a pinch of salt, you just grab a little bit and you put it in. That's a smidge, very, very tiny, only 5%. And then 50% is air and water. And the way that all of these get blended in and get the materials to make soil is through the process of weathering and decomposition. The living things are broken down by the decomposers, and weathering is the process that breaks down those rocks and minerals into soil. So Cape Cod is glacial formed, and so Cape Cod soils are glacial deposits, and we have very sandy soils. There are some areas of clayey soils, like my yard. I've broken so many things trying to dig in some areas of my yard. We've also had brick factories on Cape Cod that were being supplied clay from clay deposits. But the majority of our soil is sandy soil. And so that means that water goes right through very quickly. And so we always are enriching our soils, adding more organics, more stuff to hold on to it. Do you remember the sample that I did in my soil auger? Where was it darkest, at the top or at the bottom? Do you remember? Well, let's think about what the soil is made out of again. Just this thin, thin line is the organics layer. So that was up at the top. And then you have the breaking down of the rocks and minerals there, sand and clay. And then they all sit in most areas, not all areas, on bedrock, really big, big rock deposits. It's not individual rocks, right? I think bedrock is just the huge pieces of rock. And sometimes we can see that when they're moving and putting in roadways, you can see the bedrock is exposed. And so the organics layer is all the stuff that's breaking down. And on my soil auger, or in my soil auger, the organics layer is toward the top. And it takes a long time for things to break down into soil. It can be years and years and years. Thank goodness for the decomposers that take the pine needles and the leaves and the pine cones and the bark and the animal scat and the dead insects and dead animals and breaks them down, decomposes them into the humus layer, the rich organic layer. And then as you get further down, you see it gets lighter. And that's because the organics, the darker layers, get bleached out of that, and the rocks get bleached with the rainwater just coming through. And so when you get into those lighter layers, you don't have as much organic material. It's just the rocks and the minerals. And plants need that as well. They need those minerals, and they get them through the soil. In the next video, we're going to be talking about weathering and erosion and what impacts they have upon soil. And then we're going to be doing some experiments or modeling some activities that show us about that. But weathering is a soil creating force. It's what's breaking down the rocks and minerals into these soil components. And there's different kinds of weathering factors: temperature, water, wind, ice, plants, salts, acids, and animals can contribute to weathering as well. So stay tuned for the next video where we'll be talking about weathering. Thank you.